you in fact had a comment you wanted to make, Richard?
Well, it's rather moved on. I mean, I was just going to say I can't imagine why anyone should think it was an ethical problem. I could see why they might think it was a problem of expedience.
Hello, my name is Wayne, and I'll be your host. We're going to jump straight into this episode, but if you're a new listener, check out the outro to learn more about this podcast. Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you a little bit. Sounds like you're building an interesting tool, and yeah, it's kind of wanted to reach out and do a one-on-one call and talk to you a little bit more about it.
Yeah, definitely appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned in my email, I reached out because you have, one of the best resources on state-by-state compliance with CBD labeling and compliance as it pertains to COAs and packaging and all that stuff. You guys laid it out really clearly at Periodic Caramels, I think is the site, or Periodic Edibles, one of the two.
Yeah.
And that was really awesome. So I figured you'd have some thoughts on software to help people comply with it. It's somewhat straightforward, I guess. Like all the bits of information that I've found across all 50 states in the U.S., compliance is not too complicated, but it does have the potential to change all the time. And, making sure that all that stuff is associated, it's like putting all the right papers together and making sure they're available online. It's a little bit more, cumbersome than I think a lot of smaller producers in particular want to deal with.
Yeah. Let's start with and if we upload this as an episode for listeners too, why don't you give me like kind of the 60-second elevator pitch on the tool, Simple Certs that you're building, and then probably a little background on yourself and why you built this tool, what you were doing before, and kind of your history leading up to it.
Sure. Yeah. Simple Certs is a pretty straightforward tool made to simplify the process of compliance with COAs. That's certificates of analysis, which many states across the U.S. require CBD companies to have available on their website, and have the ability to access those QR or those COAs and those PDFs reports by QR code on on their packaging and things like that.
And you were, I think I saw you have an eCommerce like consulting company. Were you working with a bunch of CBD companies before building the tool?
Yeah. So I used to live in Denver, and, through word of mouth, we started working with quite a few different companies in the CBD business, including, Hemp Fusion and Charlotte's Web and a couple other big names and a bunch of smaller names as well.
Okay.
So we managed their entire web presence. So we became really familiar with all the needs that CBD companies have, the changing regulations, some, a bunch of things that you have to kind of, hoops you have to jump through in order to sell CBD online. So got pretty familiar with that. And we rebuilt the same solution many times in a row, particularly around being able to search and find certificates of analysis really easily. And so after building it for the third time, I thought there's something here that needs to exist across the entire industry. So we can build something and make it really easy to comply, really.
Yeah. With the tool itself, and we'll get into like the specifics of it, working with those companies, are you kind of looking to build from the business side, like a reoccurring revenue type tool that you can put out, or kind of from a business perspective, what was your goal around it?
My goal? Yeah. So my goal is, personally, I'd like to diversify my, income streams. Consulting is great, but you're really only as good as your next month's billables. And those are always kind of up in the air. Of course, we work with clients on a long-term basis, but, there's a lot less predictability in this business than there is with a SaaS product, So from a personal perspective, a little bit more predictability and a little bit more diversity in where I, make my money.
Yeah.
That's kind of the goal and the thought.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it sounds like a lot of, consulting companies or if you're, you got month-to-month contracts maybe, but something you can build that, especially that's reoccurring with once it's built, right? Minimal effort on your end, and it's, other than, innovating it and growing it. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey everyone, if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one Q&A call with me, like the one you're listening to, you can do so with the link to my calendar in the show notes. There you can schedule a time and we can cover any cannabis questions you have, science of cannabis, the business, whatever it might be, we can cover it. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Niche is small enough that like, if there even is a product here, which I'm still kind of figuring out, I don't know if people will pay for this, but if there really is a product here, like it's a very small niche, I'm pretty sure. And so it should mean that like I'm able to, one, serve the niche really well. And then two, like, I don't think there's going to be too much competition in this niche. If like, it does work, it's probably like just big enough for one person would be my guess, unless we expand into like, I don't know, other avenues. Medical marijuana has a lot more, requirements around tracking and things like that. Maybe it could grow into that space. But again, I'm just trying to see if there's a there with CBD.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think about with this tool. And I was going to bring that up too. The cannabis side, there's even more requirements for compliance. But most on that side, you have your like seed to sale tracking systems like Metric,
right? And
they're big government contracts. And then really the labs work directly with Metric to put the COAs into that system that it passed. And, you can go there and look at them. And so I'm kind of wondering if it's a compliance tool, if we're just talking about then the hemp CBD side. Is this thing really a compliance tool, or is it a potentially like a marketing tool towards the consumer? Because you kind of got two very different use cases depending on how it might be used and how you could go out and actually sell it, and get customers if it could turn into something.
Yeah, I mean, I know marketing is a big issue in the CBD industry because so many places still to this day won't let you buy ads against, anything that says cannabidiol or anything, CBD, whatever. So getting eyeballs is really tough, but
I think I was just going to say, I think if it was a marketing tool, it would be further downstream. So, for example, like us, maybe it's more of a conversion rate tool or conversion rate optimization, because we get SEO traffic, but once they're on our site, then if we have a tool that can show them the labs or how we're different or how we're testing more often, then you're converting them into buyers. So maybe it's kind of a downstream tool like that.
Yeah, I could see it working that way. I think there are two pitches, and if I've done a good job putting it on the website today and like choosing my copy, then maybe this was clear. But I did, there's one section on there, I think a subheader is like turn an obligation into an opportunity or something like that.
Yep.
So it's like all CBD companies have an obligation, a legal obligation to report on these things, to test, pretty heavily. And that's good, right? That means all the product in the space is pure and certified and all that stuff. But not every company does a great job of telling the story around, like, we tested for 73 different pesticides, which are legally obligated to do, but like, wow, that's a lot. That's a big number. And hey, by the way, we passed every test. Of course we did. And so on and so forth. And so if you embed our widget on your site, you can build a story around that a lot more easily. So I do think that there is an opportunity to use our tool to sort of tell that story a little bit more. I just don't know what's going to be more compelling to, CBD producers, wholesalers, and sellers.
Yeah, I saw you on the website. You kind of had three angles or kind of marketing customer groups. I saw kind of the compliance angle, which is for tracking. Maybe that's more internal. And, if there's any fines or recalls potentially because you failed labs or people want to see those testing results from the government side or regulation side.
Right.
And potentially even like an ERP, like enterprise resource planning tool. When you talk about like avoiding recalls, in my head, I think, well, now these lab results are tied to my supply chain, almost like a seed to sale tracking system is. There's kind of some copy in there that hinted towards that, but it wasn't as like straightforward around the compliance was, and then the marketing piece, right? An actual external consumer-facing tool that is kind of its own, category and approach to what this thing might be able to do. So yeah, I think you got those three areas, and then the decision is are any of those viable, or a couple of them viable? How would you approach them? I would ask about the customers you've been working with. I'll kind of tell you a story of my experience.
Yeah.
So in my background was kind of in science and chemistry. And early on, I really tried to build a storytelling piece around lab testing, and I thought it was very important. Hemp does have a lot less oversight and regulations than cannabis. And so there's a lot of shady companies that either aren't testing or they're showing you lab results that are 2 years old. So they haven't tested recently.
Yes.
And so I tried to kind of sell using how we followed the cannabis seed to sale tracking requirements, where we're testing multiple batches every few months. And I thought that would be really important. And maybe I haven't done it well enough yet, but I actually found not very many people were even looking at that. And I've still never had a single customer ask me about lab results or that they were looking at them or they liked that we did that. So I thought it would carry weight, but so far I have not found it to be that really help with conversions or sales from the customer's point of view, at least up until this point.
That's interesting. That's unfortunate, but it does kind of make sense because, in the U.S., we don't really have too many problems with unsafe products,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in comparison.
When we do have a problem, like in 2018, a couple people got really sick off of some bad CBD oil. And immediately, every single state in the U.S. came up with their own things, and I don't think that's a problem anymore, and so people just aren't concerned. So that does make sense that as a conversion tool, it's not first in foremost in people's minds.
Yeah. Have you had any of your current customers or clients say that they thought it could be a marketing tool, or that their customers actually are asking about COAs or lab results? Have you kind of heard that at all?
Yes, but it might not be frequently.
Right.
We hear about the requests, but I think we must hear about every single request because they're outliers, and then they precipitate some change into the code that we've built for them. And it's instead of wow, they're getting inundated by these requests all the time, and we're making a change because of that. I think they're just hyper responsive to this because it does carry some regulatory teeth as well. And the last thing you want is an FDA cease and desist letter or whatever it is.
Right.
That does happen, especially for the larger companies.
Yeah. So I would say at this time, probably taking off the marketing it as a marketing tool, probably off the list, which means you're kind of left with the compliance side. So you're not really marketing towards consumers. You're really going B2B. It's an internal tool they can use for compliance. Is maybe how you'd have to try to sell it. It sounds like that's what you're leaning towards right now anyways. That's your main title on your website, is COA compliance for CBD companies. Yeah.
Yep.
And then when I think about it for compliance, I've had edible business on both sides. So I've been a state licensed processor in Oregon, and we also have the hemp CBD side. This tool, I almost feel would have more weight or be valuable on the cannabis side, because there are so many black and white requirements, and each state is so different, especially for an MSO, a multi-state operator that's in multiple states, and there's a lot to keep up on for them. But again, the cannabis side, you're talking about big government contracts, and companies like Metric or the seed to sale tracking systems are kind of building this tool just naturally into their platform already.
Yeah, it's not really
a
third party thing.
Right. And so if we looked at just the hemp side or the CBD side, right now, the hard part is it's kind of crazy, the lack of oversight and regulations around the hemp side. So some states have done maybe a little more, maybe a little less. But if you just look at the federal requirements or the FDA, as far as I know right now, the really the only requirement and the FDA is not providing like any guidance on what they're going to do,
Right.
what they want to see. And so if you get that letter from them, like, cease and desist, well, is this tool going to cover someone's, be like an insurance policy, or is the FDA going to go, well, I don't even know what that is or how to use it? Like, if it's going to help in that way. And as far as I know right now, the requirements are only, so if I made edibles, technically the only thing I would legally have to get tested was the hemp flower I used to infuse the edibles to make sure that was 0.3% THC or less. Like, they haven't provided...
You're talking about for the FDA regulations? That was the
right, for
requirement?
the Farm Bill. Yeah, for the Farm Bill, to have a COA. And so obviously all the growers have to do that, and they test it pre-harvest at a certain time. But for processors, like, they've provided no guidance. So, I mean, if I want to be a really shady operator, like, I could not even test my edibles. I could just do like a mass balance calculation and say, like, the flower had this potency, so I can just assume this is what ended up in the edible. Obviously, that's not good business practices, but I don't.
Right.
There's not an actual like regulation that would force the use of this tool for a lot of people around the compliance side. Have you seen any states like stepping in and actually providing guidance around like those processed products or anything with companies you've been working with?
In terms of what actually goes into the COA, the actual certificate of analysis, I'm not 100% sure what goes into that, but most companies seem to be complying with you test the end product. Every single end product that you create gets its own COA, and like there's a sort of table stakes. You're going to test the 73 pesticides. You're going to test for the 4 heavy metals. All this other stuff. That seems to be pretty standard across the board. Most people are doing these batteries of tests, the same number, the same things. States, in addition to the COA, they are also looking for, like Utah, for example, is one that's top of mind. I was just looking at it. They want to know how many products were produced in the batch, right? So if you were making, 10 milligram edible and you produced 5,000 of them, they want to be able to find that information online somewhere. They want to know the date that it was manufactured. They want to know the expiration date. If you have any co-manufacturers, meaning like if you have anyone who helped wrap up all the gummies, right? The gummies were produced in one factory by someone, some other company, third party, and then they were shipped to, another for packaging. They want to be able to find information on both of those co-manufacturers. Yeah. And I don't think Utah has this one too. Utah was pretty stringent, but other states want to see QR codes that you can like scan on the package, and it'll take you directly to the test result. All this stuff. So
interesting.
If you only care about the FDA and the federal level, then I think you're probably right for the time being. Like, the lack of guidance is really kind of it's been a real thorn in the paw for the industry, because, well, everyone's a little cagey about working with CBD, right? From payment processors to fulfillment providers, whatever. But anyway, states are coming up with their own regulations and rules, and now you have 50 different things to keep track of, and it's a little bit of a hydra. Right. Lots of heads to keep track of. And so this tool is kind of meant to be a central location where, like, okay, if you do a production run and you add all the information in all the fields in Simple Certs, you should be compliant with all 50 states. And by the way, eventually I'd like to do something where, hey, here's if you want to print 5,000 QR code stickers, they'll link directly to your batch, inside Simple Certs or something like that. Right. Making that process really, really simple as well. Could be valuable. Again, I don't know too much about like packaging. I'm a digital guy. Yeah. So it's all things that I need to learn.
Yeah, it's interesting. Utah, I hadn't heard that they maybe are requiring more of those, like the batch size or the manufacturing date. Those are all things that are required in the cannabis side for compliance. But I just don't see like clear guidelines or rules that they're actually neat. I mean, they're all good business practices. People should be doing them, but I don't see it required on the hemp CBD side yet. And I would think that if we do get FDA guidance and, processed products with CBD are actually like regulated more clearly, even if maybe they put in a seed to sale tracking system like we see on the cannabis side, then you're going to be looking at, again, huge state contracts that people like Metric, the ones that are already in line and have those relationships and systems built for cannabis, are going to step over and just do the copy paste their systems for the CBD and hemp side.
Absolutely.
Which
it's the same plant.
would
It's
kill your
just
business.
different like amounts of
Yeah.
chemicals in each, Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
I feel like people in this industry, I don't know, I feel like this tool is, I was interested about it. I just feel like you're either too early or there's not enough clarity and need that the government's putting out there that companies, it's just going to be so hard for you to gain traction with this thing. I did have one idea that you said, just something recently that sounded interesting, the payment processors. So, we work with them, and that's always, they're auditing our site, you get approval. Instead of going, if this tool was feasible, instead of going to companies like myself and saying, would you be interested in using this, paying for this tool, maybe if you approach the payment processors directly and said, hey, here's a way to cover your ass, like, here's what our tool does, and we know you guys have this issue, and you probably don't know much about lab testing. Like, they have this weird audit. Sometimes weird things are like, oh, you got to change this. And I'm like, that's irrelevant. But there's other things on there that I thought they'd have a problem with that they just don't even happen to see. But if it could be some kind of compliance, insurance policy for a payment processor, you could maybe get a huge contract where they go, okay, we love this tool. We're going to set it up, somehow build it into our website. And then every company that does CBD and we're their payment processor, we're going to require them to go and use this tool for kind of our own compliance setup. That might be an angle.
That's a great idea.
And sell to them.
I had not thought of that before.
Yeah.
I had thought about partnerships with labs because, there's kind of it makes sense for them to say, hey, what about this as well? But payment processors, that could be great because there are a couple payment processors out there who specialize in, CBD processing. And
there's not that many of them, and it's nothing better than when you're doing B2B sales and you really only got to sell one potentially or two to have a good sized business, I don't think the labs would work either. To me, I see the labs as only doing something once they're absolutely required to. And for them, I mean, we've seen lab shopping where people want a higher potency. So they'll go to different labs until they find one that's kind of shady, and we'll give them what they want because we spend tons of money at labs, monthly. It's a big bill. So, until they're absolutely required to, I don't see the labs adding this in. They want to get paid, do the tests, just email the PDF, and then they're done. You're kind of adding extra tracking and stuff that they're then maybe more, held to. Yeah, exactly. So
I was thinking maybe an affiliate program would work to incentivize them but honestly, a lot of these labs, just looking at their sites, they either look really huge and they do way more than just CBD testing, or they look really old school and they have no idea what a SaaS is, let alone affiliate. They just
it's one or the other
partnership.
Yeah, it's funny how different they are, the two. Yeah.
So,
and I saw one other line of copy too. I think maybe it was around the compliance further down. This is where I thought you said get alerts when regulations change. And when I read that, I think you want to kind of be careful and stay away from that because then you're it just feels like a whole separate business model. I mean, you're following state by state regulations and then I think there's companies doing this either with an email newsletter type list or something that they've got set up, or law firms like to offer this kind of service, but it doesn't sound like that would align with, kind of your current experience and in that wheelhouse,
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'll probably strike that from the site. It does seem like a little bit high maintenance, but like you mentioned, the law firms that kind of focus on hemp, they do provide services like that. And one of our main consulting clients actually in the CBD space, subscribes to this, and we have a very friendly relationship with some of their founders. And so, we're thinking about piggybacking on that, but I think you're right. It's just not enough of a value add for end users to warrant the potential headaches it causes on our end.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts you had around whether this tool or the industry and does your e-commerce consulting company, do you only do hemp and CBD companies, or do you do other e-com type industries as well?
We do tons of other e-com stuff. It's not really, it's just e-com in general more
Okay.
than it is, CBD. It's just that, I live in California now, but I used to live in Colorado, and
Yeah.
lots of word of mouth, kind of spreading.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of CBD in Colorado. So
Right. Yeah. It seems like a
we picked up a lot of clients, a lot of experience in the space.
big area of opportunity. Have you kind of like narrowed in on a focus? 'Cause I mean, e-commerce is such a big category, or because it's CBD companies, it's probably a big mixed bag of requests and stuff. Build a website, do SEO. Can we do paid ads? Is it kind of just a mixed bag like that, the work you've been doing?
No, the focus for me, like my background, I'm an engineer. I love getting in code, and I guess a software engineer rather than like a hard sciences engineer. But
Okay.
I love getting in the code, messing with stuff and building out products and things like that. And I like design as well. And that's really the focus that we've kept at my consulting company, Branch Labs. Kind of stayed on those sides. We don't do too much of like top of funnel, customer acquisition. We do sometimes do a little bit of like copy editing when we need to in order to like achieve our clients' goals. Same thing with like emails, email marketing. We do a little bit of that, but like we don't do too much like ads or anything like traffic acquisition beyond SEO.
Okay. Kind of more of like a developer type firm, or more work like that.
Yep.
Software engineering. Yeah.
Exactly. Design, develop.
We'll definitely have to stay in touch. Don't have my list in front of me, but every time I have an idea for something that would actually, like a tool that would have to be built that doesn't really exist yet, or that, I always write those down. So if anything comes across my way or something, I'll email it over to you. That's definitely outside of
that'd be awesome, man.
I've hired a couple developers over the past few years and built some tools and stuff. So it's very interesting.
Cool. I'm curious about you as well, if you have a little bit more time. I mean, you seem to have a lot of different products going on. You've got, edibles, caramels, and then periodic effects, right? That's the podcast and everything.
Yep.
You just seem really busy. Like, what are you up to? If something comes across my desk, I want to know if it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, so I started in 2015. I started with the edible side, and we did. We're in Oregon, so we started on the medical marijuana or cannabis program here, and then we got our rec license in 2017. So I was initially just doing edibles. I think we started the podcast around the same time, and so that we made its own brand, Periodic Effects. It's kind of the podcast, YouTube channel, and it's kind of our marketing angle because I have the background in chemistry and science, and I wanted to get more education out there. I love talking about that stuff, so it was a good way. And I also self-finance the business, so podcast is a good marketing tool when you don't have a lot of money, but you can put in sweat equity and build an audience. It's kind of the new way to build a following. It takes some energy and effort, but it doesn't take as much money. And going up against the bigger companies that are out there that do have millions of dollars to put into. Maybe they figure out paid ads, or they're doing billboards or whatever they're doing. They have huge sales teams. And then we started the hemp CBD e-commerce side. I think it was in 2021. And basically, we had the cannabis side, edibles, and it was like, well, we already have the product lines, we have the brand. It's just a different infusion, with hemp instead of the cannabis plant, which technically they are all cannabis, but low THC, 0.3% or less. And then for us, it was like e-commerce was just huge because one, we're not stuck to a single state, only selling into the dispensaries.
Right.
Now we can ship around the country, and the post office is our distribution team, which is kind of feels weird to say, especially coming from the cannabis side. And so putting the buy now button on the website was just such a game changer for us because I kind of did the wrong marketing strategy at the beginning. I went and built a digital brand. I mean, I started a podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say a podcast doesn't know anything about state lines.
Right, inside dispensaries. So when the hemp thing and the farm bill changed, it was like, I've been building up to this. Like our SEO
Yeah,
traffic,
right.
we
You laid the
get
groundwork.
we get over like 30,000 unique visitors a month to our websites. And
Oh, that's
so,
amazing.
and before, they probably weren't in Oregon. They couldn't go into a dispensary. It's hard to get someone to walk into a dispensary to buy your product when they land on a website. But when they have the buy now button, it's a whole different thing. So, yeah, the last year I actually sold off our edibles business, our kitchen and our license and everything, but kept the brand and all the product lines just to focus all in on the e-com side with doing hemp and CBD. So we've
Are you
been
white labeling then from a wholesaler, or like,
Nope.
how did that split go?
We still manufacture our own products. We're actually one of the few CBD company. Most of them do white label, but no, we make everything in-house still. So I just sold, I didn't sell our brand or product lines. I just sold the license in our facility. So we got a different manufacturing facility for the hemp side.
Gotcha.
And that kind of all finalized last year, like 2021, mid 2022. And so for the last year or so, I've really almost just gone full e-commerce. So SEO is our biggest channel for sales. And so I'm almost cut everything out. I barely do social media. I do the podcast, but I almost do no social media. And it's just full on writing blogs, doing SEO work, and developing tools in-house that we can use to, do more automation. Now AI writing and stuff is out there. So we're trying to figure out how to factor that stuff in, which is wild. And so... So yeah, anything around, we might have alignment around developing different tools, but yeah, e-commerce basically is our bread and butter now, and focus pretty much all in on that. And, we do stuff on the manufacturing side and some scaling and engineering around that, but it's, it's harder to grow sales. It's easier for us to make more products.
Yeah. That's in support of the other goals.
Right.
That's cool. I've never seen a e-commerce site that works so well and is so beautiful that's designed on Squarespace.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's been
really good.
Long time. I've worked with a couple consultants now, and everyone's trying to get me to switch. Like, oh, you got to go to WordPress or even Shopify potentially. But it's like
don't listen to anyone who tells you WordPress.
Really? Yeah. Well, I've built this whole thing up on Squarespace, and with that much traffic, I'm like, the last thing I want to do is change something major, like our back end. What do they call that? Not the crawl, but the site map, and you start shifting stuff, and one thing could just blow up all in our traffic and email list is everything. So yeah, it's still run on Squarespace, and that's where I get developers in sometimes to help build us stuff that Squarespace can't do for us, but it can do a lot. Yeah. So
darn cool, man. Well, that's awesome. If I don't know if I find anything interesting on either the marketing front for CBD or anything e-commerce specifically CBD related that I think you'd like, I'll definitely pass it along.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. I'll we've got a tool too I'll send you I think is interesting. I actually think it just went down. I don't know if it's working right now. It's called periodicsearch.com. So it's kind of like a fourth.
It is down. It's like a Heroku error.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
I just checked it.
I saw it the other day. I forget what it is, though. I forgot what I clicked on.
I try to fix that, or I don't know where you found it, but it's so we've done now, I think this tool could be sold B2B or even for like B2C. But so it basically, because we've done so many podcast episodes, I think we're over three or 400. It basically is a tool that searches the transcript from every episode we've done. And then it'll pull up all those episodes. So if you search like CBN for sleep, it'll pull up every episode where that's being said. And then when you click it, it takes you right to the part of that episode in the middle where it's being said. And so you can find, you can just basically, it's a video transcript search type thing. But yeah, I think a tool like that is interesting for like a consumer marketing tool, but internally a big company that does like training. If I started for a corporation with 10,000 employees and I wanted to learn about, I did water treatment before starting the company, and how a boiler works with this type of fuel source, and I could type that in and get 10 videos that are telling me that. Could be hugely useful for like a internal sales training tool or something like that. So that was kind of cool. We hired a developer to build that for us, so that was something kind of unique.
Is it leveraging AI like Whisper from OpenAI and stuff like that?
No,
automatically.
No, there's no AI built into it. So that would be
You
interesting.
guys had like a human go and like write out the transcripts?
No, so we have our YouTube channel and then we use Vimeo, but YouTube auto generates our transcripts for us. And then
Gotcha.
we take them and plug those into Vimeo. And then the developer tool, he built the tool. I think we use Algolia is like a search engine. Yeah, we use them on the back end to like run through those transcripts and then feed the search results, basically.
That's sick.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we produce documentation every so often for our clients, and I used to write it down. It was like the most painful thing in the world to be like, click on this menu and then go to this sub menu, and then like, oh my God. And then someone had to read that too. It was like painful to write, painful to read. And so we started using Loom to do like screen shares and just like show someone what we're doing and like talk through it.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
It's so much faster, but making those kinds of things searchable in exactly the same way, you know, when you're talking about, you know, any industry, making these videos is just a lot easier generally than writing the documentation down.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
with AI, it can be totally scaled. It's a really cool idea for a product.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have no marketing chops at all. Like I mentioned, I'm a developer, and so I'm trying to figure out the marketing side.
Yeah.
To some extent, consulting's easier because you only need to sell like, you know, a couple clients and you have a pretty good business.
Right.
And now I'm like trying to scale that up and figure out how to reach more people. And it's like, well, I'm learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of doing a survey, when you're trying to do a product, right? Like the very first thing is product market fit. It's the hardest thing to figure out. And that's why when small companies nail it, big companies buy them up, because even though a big company like, you know, Procter & Gamble, billions of dollars, they still cannot build new product. I mean, they try, but they've resorted to just buying people that figured it out, product market fit already, and then can buy them for 5 or 10 million, because that is the hardest thing to figure out for sure.
Yep. They'd rather spend money than time to figure that stuff out. Yeah. So it makes sense. Yeah. It's cool.
Awesome, Graham. Well, it was great chatting with you. We'll upload. I think this was a good conversation that, you know, listeners will find valuable. Tell people, you know, your consulting service. If anyone, you know, has a CBD company, they're listening or wants, you know, needs a developer or something. What website or where you should send them?
For the consulting company, that's branchlabs.com. And I'm G Lipsman on Twitter, and I'm pretty frequently active on there. So that's fun.
Awesome. Well, man, it was really good talking with you, getting to know you, and we'll stay in touch. All right, that was the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. And remember, if you want to purchase our effects-focused edibles, you can at periodiccaramels.com. Use code podcast. That's 20% off your first order. And periodiccaramels.com. And if you're a new listener, a quick bio or intro, my name is Wayne. Like I said at the beginning, I'm the host. And I started Periodic Edibles back in 2015 in Oregon in the medical days. Now we do Periodic Caramels, which is our hemp side, the CBD side that we ship around the country. And my background is in chemical engineering. I did that for a while after college, doing industrial water treatment, and started the edible company with really a focus on the science of cannabis, bringing that kind of knowledge and my background to look at edibles, how to, one, scale up their production, but two, focus on the effects and what's in the cannabis plant, all these different strains and use cases that it can help with. How do we dial in the edible side to meet all those unique scenarios and needs of people? So a little bit of background, bio on myself. Reach out if you have any questions or want to talk with us. You can reach out at wayne@periodiceffects.com, and that's our podcast email. All right, thank you for listening.
The ideas presented in this podcast are meant for general informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. The Periodic Effects Podcast, Periodic Edibles, and all affiliated subsidiaries disclaim any liability for any damages arising out of reliance on the information presented. Please consult licensed professionals for any medical, legal, or business advice.